The Boston Celtics are entering uncharted territory. For the first time in years, they're heading into a season without Jason Tatum leading the charge. That alone makes the upcoming campaign one of the most intriguing in recent memory. But what makes this whole situation even more fascinating is that one of the greatest legends in franchise history, Bob Cousy, just weighed in with a brutally honest take. And you better believe Celtics Nation is going to have mixed feelings about it. Cousy didn't hold back. At 97 years old, he's still got a sharp eye for the game and an even sharper tongue. He made it clear he's not convinced this team, as currently constructed, can carry the same level of success we've come to expect in recent years. And his comments weren't vague. They were targeted, specifically at Jaylen Brown and Derek White, the two players who will be tasked with keeping this team afloat while Tatum recovers. According to Cousy, Jaylen just isn't on the same superstar level as Tatum. He questioned whether Brown is capable of leading this team as a true number one option. As for Derek White, he said he's a solid and consistent player, sure, but not someone who can shoulder the burden of being a franchise centerpiece. And while some might take that as a slight, others might say it's just the truth. Because when you remove a player like Tatum from the equation, you're talking about an MVP caliber hole that needs to be filled. And to be fair, Cousy isn't totally wrong. This roster, without Tatum, looks thinner than Boston fans would like to admit. It's not just about missing one superstar. It's about the ripple effect it creates across the entire rotation. Suddenly, players who were thriving in complementary roles now have to step into the spotlight. And not every guy is built for that. But before we start writing the Celtics off completely, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Because if there's one thing we learned last season, it's that both Jaylen Brown and Derek White have shown flashes, real flashes, of being capable of more. When Tatum missed time last year, even though it wasn't a large sample size, the Celtics didn't just survive, they thrived. In the 8 games Boston played without Tatum, they went 7-1 with White on the floor. That's not nothing. In those games, Derek White didn't just show up. He elevated his game across the board. His scoring jumped from 16 points per game to 21. His assists went up. His three-point attempts climbed to over 11 per game, and he was hitting them at a ridiculous 42% clip. That kind of production, even in a short span, speaks volumes about his ability to step into a bigger role. Now, let's not get it twisted. Nobody's saying Derek White is suddenly going to transform into a league MVP or carry a team to the finals by himself. But what he did show was that he can be a legitimate second option, an all-star caliber player, someone who's capable of balancing the floor, making the right plays, defending at an elite level, and hitting big shots when it matters most. That's a huge deal for a team that's desperate for offensive balance without their main guy. And Jaylen Brown? Look, love him or hate him, the man is a baller. He's had more opportunities than most to prove himself without Tatum over the years, and the numbers don't lie. In games where he's had to be the primary scorer, Brown has consistently put up strong performances. We're talking about nearly 27 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And that's with defenses collapsing in on him, knowing he's the number one option. Even with his outside shooting still hovering around 35%, he manages to get buckets and stay efficient. One of the most memorable examples came during the playoffs last season. Eastern Conference semifinals, Game 5. No Tatum. High stakes. Huge moment. And what did Jaylen and Derek White do? They went off, combined for 60 points. Jaylen dished out 12 assists. White caught fire in the first half. It wasn't just a good game, it was a statement that when the lights are bright and the chips are down, these two guys are capable of delivering. Now, does that mean they'll be able to replicate that every single night? Probably not. But the idea that they're incapable of leading a winning team, even temporarily, feels a little premature, especially when you factor in that the team went 8-2 overall without Tatum last year. The culture in Boston runs deep, and this group has shown resilience. But here's where things get messy. Outside of Brown and White, the rest of the roster is shaky. Defensively, it's a concern. Offensively, even more so. Let's be real here. Anthony Simons, for all his offensive talent, hasn't shown any interest in defending. At best, he's a neutral presence on that end. At worst, he's a liability. Then there's Nemias Quetta. He's played fewer than 600 minutes in the league. Unproven, untested. Chris Boucher is 32 and has never been an elite defender. Can he help protect the rim? Maybe. But he's not someone you want anchoring your defense over an entire season. Peyton Pritchard is undersized. Sam Hauser has potential, but his back has been an issue. If Hauser is your third best defender, you're in trouble. Jordan Walsh, Luka Garza, Xavier Tillman, they've all got red flags. Whether it's lack of experience, lack of mobility, or health concerns, none of these guys inspire much confidence when we talk about a playoff-caliber rotation. And that's the heart of Kuzi's argument. Not just that Brown and White might not be enough, but that they're trying to carry a group that, quite frankly, doesn't have a lot of proven talent around them. So even if you're high on Jalen and Derek, it's hard to ignore the depth issues this team is facing right now. That brings us to the bigger question. What's the front office going to do about it? There are rumors flying around that the Celtics are looking to duck under the luxury tax. And not just for financial reasons. If they can stay out of the tax for 2 consecutive seasons, they'll reset the clock on the repeater penalties. That means they'd have more flexibility to build around Tatum and the core once he returns. But to do that, they need to shed over $12 million. That's not a small number, especially when you consider how tight the margins are. The most obvious trade chip? Anthony Simons. He's on expiring $27 million contract. If Boston can flip him for 2 players making around $15 million combined, and maybe reroute one in a 3-team deal, they could duck under the tax. The problem is, not many teams can absorb Simons' deal without sending out equal or greater salary. That limits their options. They could try to move Sam Hauser, but he's one of the few reliable shooters on the roster and might have real value when Tatum comes back. Same with Xavier Tillman. None of these moves are easy, and they all come with risk. Brad Stevens, though, has a track record of pulling off the unexpected. He's made savvy, under-the-radar moves before. Getting off of Kristaps Porzingis' deal, acquiring Simons in the first place. These weren't trades anyone saw coming. There's a belief in Boston that Stevens isn't just making moves for the sake of it. He's thinking 3 steps ahead. So if he's trying to get under the tax now, it's likely part of a long-term vision. Maybe they ride out this season with a slightly weakened roster, give young guys some reps, and then reload once Tatum returns. Reset the tax clock, maintain flexibility, and build for the future without blowing things up. And it's worth noting, this isn't some lost season. Boston could still make the playoffs. If Brown and White can carry the load, and if 1 or 2 bench guys step up, a top 6 seed in the East isn't out of the question. But the ceiling? That's a different conversation. One wild card that could shake things up, the development of their big men. The Celtics have quietly built a reputation for turning overlooked centers into serviceable rotation players. Luke Cornett turned into a real contributor. Daniel Tice had a nice run. Now, they're hoping Nemias Quetta, Luka Garza, or even rookie Amari Williams can follow that path. Quetta in particular has shown flashes. He turned a 2-way contract into a full roster spot last year and ended up playing around 60 games. He's big, physical, and has good instincts around the rim. If he can stay healthy and improve his offensive game, especially at the free throw line and with occasional 3-point shooting, he might just earn a real role. The Celtics desperately need one of these guys to step up, because as of now, their center rotation is the weakest part of the roster. Quetta, Garza, and Xavier Tillman, that's a trio that gives you more questions than answers. And even Brad Stevens admitted it's a concern. If none of those players emerge as reliable options, Boston could be forced to look elsewhere mid-season, which again complicates their cap situation. But there's optimism inside the building that at least one of these guys will hit. Maybe not a star, maybe not even a long-term starter, but someone who can eat minutes, protect the rim, set screens, and play with energy. If they can squeeze 30 to 35 good minutes out of that rotation collectively, it could go a long way towards stabilizing the defense. Nemias Quetta himself seems locked in. He's been talking about getting in elite shape, improving his decision-making, finishing stronger at the rim, drawing more fouls, and hitting free throws at a better rate. He's even working on expanding his range. If he can confidently take open threes, even if it's just a couple of games. That could change the floor spacing dynamics dramatically. He knows what's at stake. This is his biggest opportunity yet in the NBA. And with the Celtics needing cheap, reliable production at the 5, the door is wide open. So here we are. The Celtics are walking a tightrope, trying to remain competitive without their best player, trying to develop young talent, trying to navigate the luxury tax, trying to figure out if their current stars can truly lead without a safety net. It's a fascinating moment in the franchise's trajectory. The decisions made over the next few months, both on the court and in the front office, are going to shape not just this season, but the next several years of Boston basketball. So let's talk about the path forward. Because as much as the spotlight is going to shine on Jaylen Brown and Derek White this season, the real intrigue might come from what Boston chooses to do behind the scenes. The Celtics are standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward aggressively trying to stay relevant without Tatum, maybe even contending for a playoff spot in a wide-open Eastern Conference. The other path is about taking a calculated step back, preserving long-term flexibility, and focusing on internal development. And the truth is, they might try to straddle both lanes. There's this looming question about whether the Celtics are about to undergo a soft reset, not a rebuild. Let's not get carried away, but a strategic downshift. Let guys like Simons boost their trade value early in the year. See what kind of jump young players like Jordan Walsh or Neemias Queta can make. Let Amari Williams get his feet wet in the NBA. Give Derek White the keys to the offense and see if he can truly thrive as a lead guard. And most importantly, see how Jaylen Brown handles being the focal point every night against every defense with no Tatum beside him to draw the double teams. That's the experiment. And it's risky because the moment Tatum is out, the entire NBA is going to reevaluate what Boston really is. No one's giving them contender status without him. And if the Celtics start off slow, say they're hovering around .500 midway through the season, those trade rumors are going to kick into high gear. The calls for something drastic will get louder. Everyone's going to ask the same thing. Is this team better off blowing it up or staying the course? But Brad Stevens doesn't do panic moves. If anything, he's one of the most methodical executives in the league. He's already laid the groundwork to get out from under the repeater tax. And he knows that if Boston can ride out this year without going into a full tailspin, they'll enter the 2026-27 season with a fully healthy Tatum, a reset cap situation, and a clean runway to spend again. That's a rare position to be in, especially in this era of punishing luxury tax rules. But getting there is going to take discipline and probably some uncomfortable decisions. If the Celtics do decide to move Anthony Simons, it's not going to be just a salary dump. They'll look for value. They'll look for a deal that either brings back a contributor on a cheaper contract or opens the door for a future draft asset. The idea is to shed salary without weakening the roster too dramatically, especially if the team is still in the hunt for a playoff spot. And remember, they've got time. The trade deadline isn't until February. That gives Simons plenty of time to put up numbers and boost his stock. The other name that keeps coming up is Sam Hauser. He's one of the most valuable role players on the team. Knockdown shooter, smart cutter, solid positional defender. But he's also one of the only guys on a mid-sized contract that could be moved without gutting the core. If the front office is serious about ducking the tax, Hauser might be the casualty. That would sting, no doubt. But Stevens has shown that he's willing to make tough calls for the bigger picture. The luxury tax situation is complicated. Right now, Boston is about $12 million over the line. That doesn't sound like much in NBA terms, but the consequences of staying above that threshold are massive. Not just in terms of dollars, but also in flexibility. Teams above the second apron can't take back more money in trades, can't use the full mid-level exception, can't aggregate contracts and deals. The restrictions are brutal. And once you trigger those repeater penalties, they stack fast. For a team that's trying to compete long-term, it's a serious handcuff. So the idea here is to take the medicine now. Get under the tax. Stay there for 2 seasons. Reset the repeater clock. And then, when Tatum is back and the roster is healthy, go all in again. Load up. Use exceptions. Swing trades. Bring in reinforcements. The window isn't closing, it's just shifting. But to make that work, this season has to be approached with a different lens. That's why the player development angle is so important. Guys like Jordan Walsh, Neemias Quetta, Amari Williams, even Peyton Pritchard, they're not just filler pieces this year. They're going to be asked to step up, and not in garbage time, in real games with real stakes. Because Boston doesn't just need minutes, they need progress. They need one or two of these guys to become real rotation pieces, players who can contribute when it matters, players on cost-controlled deals that allow the team to build around the stars without financial strain. Take Neemias Quetta, for example. He's already proven he can hang. He's big, mobile, active on the glass, and seems to have great instincts as a rim protector. His offense still needs work, but he's putting in the hours. He's talking about increasing his free throw rate, working on his outside shot, making better reads out of the short roll. This is a player who's hungry, who sees the opportunity and is going all in to grab it. If he makes a leap this year, even a small one, Boston might just have their next great developmental win at the 5 spot. And Amari Williams? He's raw, sure, but the physical tools are there. He's got size, length, timing, and reportedly one of the highest basketball IQs on the roster already. If Boston can turn him into a capable backup big by the end of the year, that's a massive win. Because one of the biggest holes in this roster is interior defense. They don't need a star in that role. They just need competence. Someone who can play solid positional D, rebound, and stay on the floor without fouling out in 15 minutes. Even Luka Garza, who's bounced around the league and never quite found his footing, has a chance to carve out a niche here. Boston has a proven track record with turning journeyman bigs into contributors. They did it with Cornette. They did it with Tice. Garza might be next. All it takes is one strong training camp and a few good showings early in the season to earn a real spot in the rotation. Now, let's circle back to Jaylen Brown, because with Tatum out, the microscope is going to be fixed on him in a way it never has before. This is his moment, his team, his season. Every criticism, every compliment, every box score is going to come with extra weight. And that's fair. That's what comes with being the highest paid player in franchise history. The good news is Jaylen has shown he can handle the pressure. He's played without Tatum before. He's produced. He's led comebacks. He's taken over games. He's dropped 30, 40, even 50 when needed. The question isn't about talent. It's about consistency. Can he bring that same level of engagement every night? Can he make plays for others when the defense collapses? Can he cut down the turnovers, stay composed, and lead not just by scoring, but by setting the tone? Because for Boston to stay afloat this season, Jaylen doesn't just need to be good. He needs to be great. Not just as a scorer, but as a leader. He needs to be the guy rallying the team during rough patches, holding teammates accountable, communicating on defense, staying locked in even on nights when his shot isn't falling. And most importantly, he needs to show that he's more than a co-star, that he could be the face of the franchise when called upon. That's what this season is really about for him. Derek White is right there with him. A little more understated, a little less flashy, but just as important. White has grown into one of the most reliable two-way guards in the league. He defends, shoots, facilitates, and rarely makes mistakes. But now the spotlight is going to force him out of his comfort zone. He'll have to be more aggressive, more vocal, more assertive as a playmaker. We already know he can put up 21 and 6 when needed. Now it's about doing it over an entire season as one of the team's primary engines. If he makes that leap, Boston might find themselves with one of the most underrated backcourts in the NBA. So here's the big picture. The Celtics aren't tanking. They're not giving up, but they're adjusting. They're retooling. They're playing chess, not checkers. It's about sustainability, about surviving the short-term losses to build a stronger, more flexible long-term core. And if they pull it off, they'll be in a better position than almost any team in the league by the time Tatum returns. Of course, nothing is guaranteed. The East is going to be competitive. Teams like the Bucks, Sixers, Heat, and Cavs are all fighting for position. Boston could easily slip to the middle of the pack. But that doesn't mean the season is a failure. In fact, this could be one of the most important years in the franchise's modern history. Not because of what they win, but because of what they learn. About Jaylen, about Derek, about their young guys. about how far they can stretch this system without their best player. And if the Celtics end the season knowing who they can trust, who can contribute, and who's part of the next chapter alongside Tatum, that might be the biggest win of all. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. In what could be one of the most surprising moves of the offseason, sources close to the league suggest that DEMAR DEROZAN has allegedly put pen to paper with the Boston Celtics, sending shockwaves through both fan bases and front offices alike. Although no official statement has been released by the team or the players' camp, whispers around league insiders point to a multi-year deal that may reshape the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics, fresh off a deep playoff run and hungry to solidify their roster, are rumored to have pursued DeRozan with an aggressive pitch centered on championship contention, veteran leadership, and a role tailored to his mid-range mastery. This development, if confirmed, would not only bolster Boston's offensive versatility, but also add another seasoned voice to a locker room already brimming with competitive fire. DeRozan's skill set, particularly his ability to create shots in isolation and navigate high-pressure moments, seems to perfectly complement the Celtics' young core. While fans debate the validity of the reports, the very idea of DeRozan wearing green and white has already ignited social media conversations and sparked speculation about how his presence might alter the team's identity in the seasons ahead. The rumored agreement between DeRozan and Boston is already prompting heated discussions among analysts, who are dissecting the potential on-court chemistry between the veteran swingman and the Celtics' established stars. If these whispers prove accurate, Boston could field one of the most dynamic scoring trios in the league, blending DeRozan's mid-range prowess with Jason Tatum's all-around offensive dominance and Jaylen Brown's two-way explosiveness. The prospect of such a combination has fans imagining a half-court offense capable of dismantling even the most disciplined defenses. Skeptics, however, question whether DeRozan's traditional style can seamlessly mesh with Boston's pace and space tendencies, given his preference for slowing down the tempo and working from the elbows. Yet, supporters counter that this exact contrast could become Boston's hidden weapon, allowing them to control the flow of games against opponents who thrive in transition. Training camp, if and when the deal is confirmed, would be the ultimate testing ground for integrating DeRozan into head coach Joe Mazzulla's system. Until then, speculation reigns supreme, and the basketball world is left to wonder how the Celtics will balance their offensive schemes to maximize the talents of all three star-caliber wings without sacrificing efficiency or cohesion. Beyond X's and O's, the emotional weight of such a rumored signing cannot be ignored. DeRozan, who has long been respected for his professionalism, work ethic, and ability to handle pressure, would bring a veteran gravitas to a Celtics team still in search of its first championship in over a decade. His rumored decision to join Boston, if true, could signal that the Celtics are no longer just a young, up-and-coming squad, but rather a fully mature contender with the experience to close out tight series. This move could also serve as a statement to the rest of the NBA. Boston is all in on winning now. For DeRozan, the chance to potentially play under the bright lights of TD Garden and contend for a title alongside two established All-Stars might represent the perfect chapter in an already decorated career. His leadership in the locker room, combined with his clutch performances on the court, could prove invaluable during the grueling postseason grind. While the deal remains unconfirmed by official channels, the whispers have grown too loud to ignore, and anticipation continues to build as the league waits for concrete details that could redefine Boston's competitive trajectory for years to come. From a broader league perspective, the possibility of DeRozan joining the Celtics could trigger a ripple effect in the NBA's trade and free agent markets. Rival teams in the East, particularly those with championship aspirations like Milwaukee and Miami, would likely be forced to reassess their rosters and counter Boston's new offensive threat. Scouts and executives might scramble to find defensive stoppers capable of slowing down a Celtics lineup featuring three wings who can score at will. Moreover, such a move could influence free agents still on the market, as the allure of joining a strengthened Celtics roster could outweigh other offers. For Chicago, DeRozan's rumored departure would mark the end of an era and potentially signal a rebuilding phase, pushing them to seek younger talent and future assets. The Celtics, conversely, would be embracing an immediate win-now mentality, gambling that DeRozan's consistency and experience will pay off when the playoffs arrive. All of this remains speculative for now, but the sheer plausibility of this scenario has turned it into one of the most discussed topics among basketball insiders, sports radio hosts, and fan forums across the country, each adding fuel to an already roaring fire of rumors. Even without an official announcement, the speculation surrounding DeRozan's alleged signing with Boston has already taken on a life of its own, with media outlets running hypothetical starting lineups and playoff projections. The fan response has been divided, with some celebrating the potential for instant offensive upgrades and others voicing concerns over fit, contract length, and luxury tax implications. Nonetheless, the Celtics' rumored boldness fits a pattern seen in recent seasons, where contenders are willing to take significant risks to gain even the slightest edge in the postseason. If the deal becomes reality, Boston's rivals will face the daunting task of preparing for a team that can attack for virtually every spot on the court, while boasting one of the league's most disciplined defenses. For now, all anyone can do is wait, speculate, and imagine the noise that would erupt in Boston if DeRozan's first game in green and white were to be confirmed. Until then, the story remains in the realm of rumor. Yet it's a rumor so vivid, so plausible, that many have already begun picturing DeRozan's smooth mid-range jumper echoing off the rafters of TD Garden, becoming the soundtrack of a new era for Celtics basketball. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.